when LSU takes the field, of course, they will be debuting a new look offense. I mean, the fundamentally the offense will be the same, but you're going to have a lot of new talent. No Joe Burrow, no Clyde Edwards-Helaire, no Justin Jefferson, no Thaddeus Moss. 4 of your top 6 offensive linemen are gone. We know that. But Mickey Joseph is super confident about this group of receivers, man. Mickey Joseph, LSU's associate head coach and wide receivers coach, stopped by off the bench earlier today, and man, they started talking about Racey McMath. And the reason this became super relevant for me anyway is because I'm bebopping around on Twitter earlier today, and Jim Nagy, who is the executive director of the Senior Bowl, earlier today had a tweet, and he was tweeting about LSU wide receiver Racey McMath. His tweet was, I'll just read it for you here directly. He said, under the radar name to remember for the 21 NFL draft is LSU football wide receiver Racey McMath. Hybrid wide receiver, has been used in 12 personnel, some cool flash plays on 19 tape. We like him based off tool similarities to Senior Bowl alum Stephon Sullivan, who, of course, played at LSU as well. Again, it's one thing when we say it. It's one thing when the LSU coaches says it. It's another when the guy who's the executive director of the Senior Bowl, who's inviting players to his game to put on the best game, the best all-star game that every NFL team comes to and is sponsored, makes money. It's like that. It's another one you consider the source, and it's Jim Nagy. But that got my wheels spinning, and then I heard the guys talking to Mickey Joseph today, and he gushed about Racey McMath. Here's what Mickey Joseph said about LSU's number 3 wide receiver.
The problem Racey has is that Racey plays at LSU and he plays in a stack room, okay? Now, if Racey could play in some of those other conferences, little watered-down conferences, and you know, they go where that kid can play. But no, Racey plays at LSU, he plays in the SEC West, so he gets the third guy. But he's better than most first guys that they're going to take in the first round. Because Racey's big, he can run, he's strong, he's smart, and guess what he can do? He can play on every special team, and he don't mind lighting you up. You know, and that's one thing he brings to our room. Racey brings attitude to our room, but he brings work. I got to drag him at practice. I got to make him get out. Like, hey, you got to get out. This is your rep off. He's going to work his tail off. And I take my hat off to Racey because it didn't start that way for him. It started slow. He got behind the 8 ball. Then Jamardin came in, you know, but guess what he kept doing? He said, I'm going to get on special teams and I'm going to help this team win. And then I'm going to get myself in a situation where I'm going to be in this lineup. It might take to his senior year, but he's here. We're happy to have him. He's going to have a great year this year. And you're right, he can be a first or second rounder.
I hope we see him on special teams. You know, when I fell in love with Michael Clayton, he was a freshman in 01, and he made some freakish catches, but that was Josh Reed's year. Make no mistake, when Reed won the Blitnikoff. But I still have the vision of the LSU-Auburn game. They got moved to December, and Michael Clayton flying downfield with his hair on fire, splitting some cat from Auburn in half on special teams. You remember that? Maybe my favorite LSU football player of all time, not just by position, my favorite LSU football player of all time. Jarvis Landry's on the short list. As great a receiver as he was, I love the fact that he would annihilate, a 5-star wide receiver, annihilating dudes on special teams. And here you have Mickey Joseph saying the same thing that Racey McMath is willing to do, which is awesome. That'll certainly get him on an NFL roster. But one of the really interesting conversations when you start to dissect LSU's passing game for 2020 and what it might look like, you know, you lose Justin Jefferson, 111 catches, 1,540 yards, 18 touchdowns. The other 2 receivers you lose are Derek Dillon, 15 for 202 and 2 scores, and Stephon Sullivan, 12 catches, 130 yards. In all, just a receiver. I'm not talking about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm not talking about Thaddeus Moss. I'm just talking about the receivers that you lose. 138 receptions, 1,872 yards, and 20 touchdowns. Even if Jamar sees his production drop because teams shade to his side and double team him, that's going to open up the opportunities for Terrace Marshall and obviously for Racey McMath. The other thing that was astonishing was listening to Mickey Joseph talk about Arik Gilbert and how big of a matchup problem he is and is going to be for opposing defenses this year.
he's a matchup problem. If you got him to the left and you got Jamar to the right, you got to pick your poison. You know, you got who you want to guard, who you want to give the attention to, and I'm sure they're going to give it to Jamar. So this kid's going to be great because this kid's going to get probably the third or fourth best cover guy on each team because Terrence is going to get the second best cover guy. Racey might get the third. This kid's going to get the fourth and help that kid because guess what? If he gets the fourth cover guy, game's over now. He's going to take over.
When you're talking about the highest graded tight end in the history of 24/7 sports, stepping on the field and matching up with the opponent's fourth best cover option, all of a sudden you start to there are things that start to fire in your brain when you think about what this offense is going to look like. And yes, I have as many questions as anybody does about what's Miles Brennan going to look like with a minute 38 to go in the swamp down 2. And you got to have it. Saw Joe Burrow try to do that a couple of years ago, and he threw a couple picks late in the fourth quarter of that game. What does Brennan do in those spots? But the other thing I can think of is, man, you keep Brennan upright, and all of a sudden you got your fourth best guy on Arik Gilbert, your third best guy on Racey McMath, a guy who Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl is gushing over. Man, all of a sudden you could look at that passing offense and go, whatever expectation people have of this passing offense carrying over from a year ago feels very realistic. And what's more, the way that they've recruited at that position, not only are you looking at Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, Racey McMath, but you got a consensus 5-star in Kayshon Boutte coming in along with Coy Moore and Alex Adams. And you've also got Trey Palmer, who the coaching staff loves, Jeray Jenkins, and Jontre Kirkland. You have no shortage of options at that position. All of a sudden, for a guy who a couple of years ago was screaming red-faced for anybody who would try to ask me about receivers because I was so sick of hearing the conversation every year, admittedly, this is a hell of a lot of fun, thinking about what this is going to look like this year, even without Justin Jefferson. All right, it's after further review. You want to go catch the full interview with Mickey Joseph from Off the Bench, go to 1045ESPN.com. On demand, off the bench, you'll catch the guy's interview with LSU's receiving coach and associate head coach, Mickey Joseph. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.